Hello, welcome. Thank you for this opportunity. Today we'll talk about what our project, which is called the Hub, which is the evolution of our data management system at the BTLF, and the introduction of ISNI in the book supply chain in Quebec. Next slide, please. First of all, a few words about the BTLF. BTLF is an organization with it's actually 25 years. There's a little typo here. 25 years of experience serving the book industry professionals in Quebec. BTLF acts as the metadata aggregate integrator for the French-Canadian book market. We're a leader in implementing international standards in Quebec and French in Quebec's French language book industry. We're the hub for technology integration in Quebec's French language book industry also. And also finally, the BTLF is we have a unique position at the heart of the book industry, as we say, a place of where interests of all parties meet. We try to be agnostic, as we usually say, between the various players, whether it's distributors, diffusers, libraries, bookstores, and publishers, and so on. So we're at the middle of all these players. Next slide, please. Our mission at BTLF is in 3 points. First of all, our goal is to improve marketing of French language publishing products in Quebec and in Canada and in Quebec, to promote and encourage the marketing of Canada and Quebec's French language publishing products abroad. And finally, our role is also to encourage and facilitate the communication and cooperation between the publishers, booksellers, distributors, librarians, and all the actors in the, as I said on the previous slide, where we try to be agnostic. So we understand the needs of all the players and we try to coordinate all the efforts. So that's basically our mission. Next slide, please. In 2018, BTLF decided to, we wanted to redo all our IT infrastructure to manage metadata. When we say manage metadata, it goes from gathering metadata from publishers and distributors, validate the actual metadata, have some quality control, obviously, on this data, and finally, to be able to export. So next slide, please. As you can see, our previous system was extremely complex. As you can see, it's a system that was built over 25 years, where a lot of patching had been done over the years, where the system became more and more complex. A lot of manual work was required, very few automated processes. So the risk of errors was higher and the system was not very efficient. Okay, next slide, please. So that's what brought us to, in 2018, we couldn't move on that way. If we wanted to have a system with more flexibility, we decided to redo all the infrastructure. And our new system, which is called the MED, Métadonnées Éditeur Distributeur, is in function since January 2021. Next slide, please. So in a very high-level view of our system is basically we receive via FTP automatic files from publishers and distributors. Publishers provide us bibliographic data. Distributors provide us commercial data. We receive them via FTP. There's some validations that are done automatically and that go into our import database. Another way of gathering the data is publishers interface, which is called the l'espace éditeur, where the publishers can provide data through our web interface that has been developed, and we gather all this information that we import, we structure, we validate, and we build it in. We do some ONIX. We integrate it in a proper ONIX. From there, we have some automatic rules that we compare various fields just to make sure the sanity of the data. There's various comparisons. After that, the data is exposed in a dashboard to our catalogers internally. All metadata that we receive, every record that we receive is at least once, the first time that we receive it is validated by one of our catalogers internally at BTLF. One of the differences is that now all the system is based on authority records management, basically for contributors, for publishers, collections, and so on. We have authority records, proper authority records that are attached to the various records to make sure that the data is coherent and validated. And after that, all this data is exported. Next slide, please. That's a very high-level view of what we do. Now that we have so a lot of work has been done to have our new IT infrastructure. That'll gives us a lot more flexibility, a lot more efficiency, since we've automated a lot of the processes and a lot of the validations have been done. But this being said, we've redone all the work internally. But the book chain in Quebec, as we say, it's a book chain, and as in every chain, the chain is a solid
probably be
link. So basically, now what we have to do is to work on the various processes with our external partners, whether it's libraries, distributors, diffusers, right holders, bookstores, and all that, to make sure that the overall flow of metadata in the trademark and the book market is efficient. So at the end of the day, so that's what we're working on right now. So next slide, please. What we've done is we did a first analysis where we mapped all the processes with a professor at a local business school in Montreal at HEC Montréal, who specializes in IT professor who specializes in working out the workflows and optimizing workflows. So we analyzed the overall process from the distributors and the publishers all the way to the end users, which are basically bookstores and libraries. And we identified various problems, more than three, but the three main ones were that publishers typically have to enter data multiple times in different systems. We noticed that the production of metadata works in silos. There's a lot of silos, which is not very efficient, especially in a market the size of Quebec, which is not comparable, obviously, to France or to other markets, obviously. We need to try to optimize this process. So that was the first problem that we noticed. Another one was that, second one is that the downstream users, we mean basically bookstores and libraries, they obviously need complete information delivered on time. Currently, sometimes metadata has to be copied by hand or collected from other internet stakeholders or stuff like that. So the process is not efficient, and it adds a lot of work for the people downstream, once again, bookstores and libraries. And the third one is that stakeholders do not understand sometimes the impact of their actions on other members of the book chain, and at the end of the day, on the discoverability of their works. So to understand why they have to do such actions or why they have to provide such metadata there's quite a bit of education, and that's something that we have to work on. Next slide, please. So obviously, to every problem, we're working at finding solutions. What came out of our analysis and the overall process of looking at analyzing the various process is that we need a centralized data. We need to centralize the data to limit multiple entries that waste time and cause unnecessary errors. It's one thing to tell publishers to provide metadata, but if they have to input the metadata 7 times or a various number of times, it adds burden to their work. So that's something that we need to be able to do. Second is to be able to enable to exchange structured data in both directions. For now, as we'll see in a few slides, flows are unidirectional from the publisher and the distributors and so on. So we need to be able to have information flow both ways. So import in metadata as well as export them. And finally, we need to optimize the overall metadata management. Next slide, please. Which brings us to our current project, which is the BTLF is becoming what we call our hub, the book supply chain hub in Quebec and in French Canada. So that's the project that we're currently working on. So next slide, please. The way we can explain it in in an image like here is at the top, you see flows of metadata that are unidirectional. The metadata in blue at the top, well, gray blue, is what our current system is doing. So we receive commercial metadata from our publishers, commercial metadata from our distributors, bibliographic metadata from the publishers. We gather the information, bundle it together, we'll obviously go through all the validations and all that, and we send it to the booksellers, libraries, and others. Once again, the flow is unidirectional. With the that's our current system. With the hub, what we're trying to add, we're adding a layer where we want to have bidirectional flows with all of these providers. With distributors provide us commercial metadata, but their need also of bibliographic data for some of their needs. So what we want to do is the metadata that we receive from the publisher, being able to push it to the distributors. So to simplify the work for the distributors as well as for the publishers. Same thing for digital distributors. We're currently working with one of the digital distributors in Quebec to be able to send them when the publisher enters their bibliographic information for a print book, a lot of the information is exactly the same as for their ebooks. So we want to be able to push this information automatically to the digital distributor to simplify the work as well for the distributor as well as for the publisher. So these are projects that are going to be active before the end of 2022. There's other stakeholders. Right managers also are in need of bibliographic metadata, so we want to be able to send them the information, and we have universal connectors that allow us to send this metadata to various type of players. Next slide, please. So the way to see it is that in the middle, there's the hub, which is the BTLF, and we exchange information with all types of partners in the industry. Once again, right holders, publishers' website, publishers themselves, diffusers, distributors, and so on. So schematically, that's what we're trying to recreate. Next slide, please. Obviously, all this work that's been done over the years, or well, since 2018, we've done it with one thing in mind, is that we want our new infrastructure to push international standards. We want, if we're talking about interoperability or discoverability of titles, we need to be able to support these international standards. First of all, with THEMA, now since the beginning of this year, THEMA is we've replaced what we had a proprietary classification scheme that was used. Now all the titles are provided in schema. Publishers provide us THEMA. Then again, there's some work to be done with publishers. We're doing some training, education on how to use THEMA properly. For all the French data, basically which is a big part, obviously, of our catalogs, we receive THEMA from Elect, our French partner, that provide us this information. So the THEMA part is done, or we're still working on it, but it's still done, and that's what we see in our catalogs right now. Onyx, obviously, all flows that come out of BTLF. Almost all of them are in Onyx 3, and we try to have as we would say, the purest Onyx 3 possible, that are as close to the norms as possible. So that's what we've been working on. As for files that we import, we politely ask for Onyx. Obviously, we don't control all the time what our partners can send us. For some commercial data, we can still receive some flat files. That's obvious. But from publishers, we ask to receive their data, bibliographic data in Onyx 3. We work with them at improving the quality of their Onyx 3 on a daily basis. So that's an ongoing process, which brings me to the third standard that we're working at implementing is the ISNI, which is the topic of today's presentation, which is still to be completed. Next slide, please. There are currently two ISNI agencies in Quebec. There's a BTLF. We've been an agency since 2018, and we've been working on integrating ISNI. One of the logic behind that is that we want to stay away from proprietary identifiers that are specific. We can work with the BTLF identifiers, ELEC identifiers, BTLF, BNF identifiers. We want to try to simplify that and use the international standard, which is ISNI, and have one single identifier used by the whole book chain. That's what we're pushing towards. Also, there's a BAMQ, la Bibliothèque Archives Nationales du Québec, which is also an ISNI agency. They attribute automatically ISNIs when the legal deposit of a title is done, or if it's a work which is not subject to legal deposit, there's an online application for person and organizations to have an ISNI. Next slide, please. Here are some of the issues that well, it's work in progress, obviously, on our side to be able to integrate. As I said earlier, we're trying to automate as much of the processes as possible. So we want to try to automate the attribution of the validation of ISNI and attribution of ISNI as much as we can, which can be quite a challenge. We decided to use not a batch approach for ISNI, but to use their APIs. The SRU API, which is the consultation API for ISNI, and the Atom API, which is the update API. So we use both of them. And we've had some challenge at matching our authorities with the ISNI database. The first one, if you look at the SRU API, which is once again the consultation one, with several calls, we tried providing various data, last name of the contributor, first name, date of birth, the BNF ID that we have, and so on. We got a 50%, well, initially we got a 50% of strong associations with unique ISNIs, which is quite good. And so for that part, for 50% of our database, the process worked properly and we can easily identify them. But we had some of the challenges that we've had are, well, probably, first of all, problem of multiple ISNIs for the same authority, okay? We have a challenge of merging, of attributing these databases. Sometimes using pseudonyms in English. We might have pseudonyms in one record here at BTLF, while sometimes ISNI, ISNI agency, there can be multiple ISNIs for pseudonyms. So that has cost us some challenges. So one of the challenges that there's, for all the ISNIs that we cannot match automatically, which is a significant percent of our database, it's a large volume and it requires a lot of manual work or manual management. Given the size of our team, we want to try to automate this matching properly. One of our goals is to work with the publishers to be able to work with them at identifying the proper ISNI for their authors or their contributors. That's something that we're working on. Next slide, please. So basically, if we didn't find any match using the SRU, we use the Atom API. The first test that we've had we weren't too successful. I think we were providing too much information, transmitting too much data, which didn't provide a good match, or Atom would create several ISNIs for the same contributor. So basically, a second round of tests, what we did was to send a minimum information, basically ISBNs, date of birth, name, surname, and we got a better result. But then again, we still have a percentage of our database with no single ISNI, and that still requires some manual work and interaction with our publishers to get it to work properly. Next slide, please. So these are some of our challenges. The main questions that we have is that in order to make sure we have a good quality control, do we ask the publisher to provide us the ISNI, or should our system automatically go and get the ISNI in the database? Ideally, we would be able to just gather the information, but whatever way we decide to go, BTL should validate and verify the ISNI provided by the Onyx or that the publisher has provided to us. So that's something that we still want to make sure that every time we validate the validity of the ISNI. Also, the second point is that we should be able to associate, obviously, for the missing ISNIs or authors that have no ISNI, be able to automatically assign the ISNI. So we're currently looking at solutions, and we're reaching out. For now, we've been working more by ourselves, but we're reaching out with the BA&Q, which is the other ISNI agency. We have a meeting next week, I believe, with them to compare notes and see how they're doing things and see how we can improve the overall process. Next slide, please. Well, thank you. That's it. If you have any questions, I'm free. Looking forward to hear questions, suggestions, and so on. Thank you.